Hey guys, I just wanted to do my review of The Flash Season 3, Episode 2, Paradox. So, this takes place like right after the season premiere, after Barry gets back from the past with Reverse Flash and realizing that Joe and Iris are on the outs, and he's noticing other changes as well to the point where he's freaking out, and then the episode opens with him like running all the way to Star City to talk with Felicity about it, and she acts as his confidant, and after Barry stops a biker who robbed a jewelry store, he realizes that you get to see how there's kind of like this like unspoken tension between the team. Cisco's basically doesn't have any of his joking, light-hearted behavior. Like he's down in the dumps. He doesn't care about nicknaming the thief, even though Barry jokes around about it, and so he leaves to go to grief counseling because it turns out Dante, in this post-Flashpoint timeline, died in a car accident. He was killed by a drunk driver, and also it turns out in the post-Flashpoint, in addition to other changes to this post-Flashpoint timeline, Iris ended up not forgiving Joe for lying about Francine. When he's explaining all the changes, Barry also goes to the computer and finds out that Sarah Diggle, John's daughter, no longer exists. He has a son instead named John Diggle Jr., which is basically supposed to make the dystopian future we saw in episode 6 of Legends of Tomorrow, I guess, canon, which I thought was kind of bullshit. They could have I thought they would have just had John Diggle would have just been like a younger brother. They could have had a second kid, which is, I don't know, it's kind of I think it's kind of like horrifying to me that they've retconned her out of existence. I mean, like a 3-year-old or something, like a 1 or 2-year-old out of existence, another change is that Barry has been working with a forensic scientist named Julian Albert for the last year, who they don't get along, and he's basically incredibly surly, finds Barry a pain in the ass, can't stand him, and it's almost like it's somewhat reminiscent of Harry's personality from Earth 2 Harrison Wells from season 2, at least before his character development. And people are wondering why Barry's acting so weird around them, because they're of course not aware of the changes. But he's not the only one who still has but Barry still has memories of the other timelines, but it turns out Edward Claris is also getting visions of his life in the Flashpoint timeline, to the point where he's led to this temple where Dr. Alchemy is able to restore his abilities, and now he's taken back his identity, becoming the rival. Now gets revenge on Barry for taking away the life he had in the Flashpoint timeline. And you could tell like somebody was watching from afar the whole fight that they had initially. And then when Barry reveals that he knows who the rival is to Edward Claris, even though they're all kind of shocked by this, and Iris tries to get Barry to fess up as to what's going on, why he's acting so weird, and Barry refuses and just decides maybe he'll just go back in time and try to repair all the damage he did to his friends' lives. But then while he's in the Speed Force, Jay Garrick grabs him out of the wormhole, and they end up somewhere in Central City during 1998, and they end up going to a diner. And I kind of like the dynamic that John Wesley Shipp and Grant Gustin have in the scene is different from the dynamic that Henry and Barry Allen had, because Jay Garrick, he's more of like a tough love kind of guy, and he's not as nurturing as Henry Allen was, and so they have this kind of dynamic where he's a father trying to provide this tough love to his son who thinks I know what I don't need this lecture, I know what I'm doing, etc., etc. Which is kind of like feel like it differentiates both Jay Garrick from Henry Allen, the dynamic he has with Barry Allen from the Henry and Barry Allen dynamic. And he uses a coffee mug to demonstrate how he's fucking up the timeline by vibrating and saying how and getting it to crack. And even though he puts the crack piece back in place, you can still see the cracks in the timeline as his analogy. And he finally convinces Barry to just return to 2016 and then explain to his friends what he did and how he changed the timeline. And Cisco takes this information the hardest because he had asked Barry in this post-Flashpoint timeline to go back and save his brother from the drunk driving incident, and even calls him out on it, saying, so it's not okay when someone in my family dies, but you can do it for yourself. And Cisco says that, and Barry says that he's sorry for Dante's death, and that he has to move, they both have to move forward. And I guess before that, it kind of and because with the whole tension between Joe and Iris, it kind of leads to this funny moment where Barry's running back and forth between CCPD and CC Picture News, trying to convince Joe and Iris to reconcile and have everybody, Cisco, Caitlin, and Wally come over. But of course, there's still this unspoken tension, and realize that Barry's lying, and the dinner ends up being a bust, which is kind of what led to his attempt to go back and fix the timeline again in the first place. But then the MetaHuman Alert app from Cisco goes off, and then the Flash goes to confront the rival again, but he's also attacked by Dr. Alchemy with a Philosopher's Stone, who says that he's preparing the world, and then the rival takes the Flash back to the sawmill that they fought in the previous episode, is basically as a rematch, and the rival has Barry on the ropes until Cisco shows up as Vibe with his glasses and his gauntlets, which allows him to use his vibrating energy blast powers. The gauntlets are something he's been honing he's using this new timeline to hone that ability, and so he and Barry are able to double team him and subdue the rival, and he's locked up in Iron Heights. Although he doesn't give any information about Dr. Alchemy, and getting his somewhat fun side back, even though he's already named himself Alchemy, Cisco decides to call him Dr. Alchemy, just as a better ring to it, as he says. And it makes you realize that going from this kind of melancholy state that the whole team's in to back to this whole banter where the cast is you can see the cast chemistry shine through the performances, and kind of having a good time. It made me glad that this whole this kind of arc didn't last for more than one episode, because it's the cast chemistry is what makes this show so fun to watch. And when Barry brings up the fact that maybe they should go out into the field together and be a team, he says that maybe not yet. I'm not quite ready for that yet. And Barry makes an observation about how Caitlin has gone through the fewest changes in the timeline, hasn't gone through any kind of change between the timeline changes, and which is interesting because before that, Iris is the one who tries to convince everybody to forgive Barry for his actions, and Caitlin's the one who tells him that Iris is right, everybody has secrets, and how she brings up how Cisco revealed Barry's identity to Captain Cold to save Dante. And you realize the reason she's so understanding about it is because she's aware that she's developed metahuman powers like her doppelganger on Earth 2, or Killer Frost powers. And the last shot of the episode ends with two. One is that Barry and Iris are able to finally kiss without it being retconned via time travel, and then they show Alchemy communicating telepathically with Claris in Iron Heights prison, which his cell is kind of similar design to the particle accelerator prison they had at Star Labs. And then all of a sudden you see him getting what appears to he apparently gets choked to death by some claw, which doesn't match I don't think it's alchemy, because he was wearing gloves and a hood at the time. It just seems like a spiked arm, which makes you, and some people theorize that this was Savitar absorbing his Speed Force powers. So it remains to be seen who exactly that was, but overall I like this episode a lot better than Flashpoint, just because it just seemed like that episode was just meant to be set up, and they feel like they kind of bastardized the Flashpoint storyline just as a means to set up this episode. I don't know if the ends justify the means, but at least with this episode, you realize that Barry is going to stop being selfish and making so many rash decisions, hopefully. I mean, the only disappointing thing is that, at least the whole Joe and Iris thing was resolved. I guess that was one silver lining in it, but time will tell if she'll be as fully utilized as she was in Flashpoint, where she has her ear to the streets and she's helping the team. And I'm hoping she does that, because they really don't give her enough to do on this show. Candice Patton's a great actress, and she really deserves to, she's basically the lowest lane to Barry's Clark Kent. She deserves her chance to shine. But overall, what do you guys think of the episode? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you like this video, like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care.